Hello again. The Practical Animal Channel is dedicated to the public understanding of conservation, aiming to give students and career breakers tips that may just give you the edge you need to land that dream animal job. To meet today's guest, we return to Namibia in Sub-Saharan Africa. Adreena Vanier is a conservation thinker talking today about life as an intern with the Kalahari African Wild Dog Conservation Trust, studying and conserving free-roaming wild dogs living outside protected areas and mitigating conflict to landowners. She is a field worker living on wild dog time, moving when they move, and helping implement a new data collection tool called Earth Ranger. Wild dogs first appeared in the fossil record between 2 and 5 million years ago. Working with African wild dogs and living the wild life looks like this. Adreena, what's your best wild dog fact, please?
They will often take priority of caring for their young, sick, and injured is, I think, a really interesting fact about wild dogs and wild dog ecology and behavior.
Adreena, what's your most treasured possession in your field kit?
My most treasured items are my notebooks. I have my field notebook that I take down data on. That's obviously very valuable, but my personal journal is something that I carry around with me all the time. And I think that it's a really great way to reflect on what's all been happening in the field. And I know that it's something that I'm going to treasure for a long time going forward so that I can look back on everything that I've gotten to see and experience working out in the field with wild dogs.
You're a student of wildlife management.
Yeah, so I'm in a program called Environmental and Wildlife Management. It's a 3-year technical program run out of Vanier College in Montreal, Canada. And it's basically a program that sets students up to become field technicians. So we learn about how to conduct field research, and then we get background information on ecological processes, how to do proper inventorying methods and identification of the species that are in the area. So I am just about to graduate actually when I go back home. I've been in Namibia for 4 months now, completing my final credit, which was an internship work experience credit to graduate. So that's what I've been up to.
That's fantastic. And congratulations on the coming graduation. Adreena, you're from Canada, Montreal, and you are working on the conservation of endangered wild dogs in Namibia in Sub-Saharan Africa. How did you find out about that project?
Yeah, it was through my school that I originally heard about the project and wild dogs in general, actually. It's not a species that we are very familiar with or talk about a lot in Canada. So it's been a great introduction into conservation.
How long did it take from initial planning to touchdown in Namibia?
Probably about 6 months that I knew that I would be coming into this internship. And during that time with my classmates, we did things like run fundraisers to help raise money for internship programs. And then there's all the personal things that happened in that time too, like making sure that your passport's up to date, vaccinations are up to date, and then just gathering bits and supplies that you're going to need over your stay, and filling out visa applications as well.
What vaccinations were obligatory? Did you need, Adreena?
For the work that I would be doing, rabies vaccination was mandatory just because there is a chance of working around wildlife. Uh, from what I remember, I don't think there was anything else that was mandatory, but there were a few that were suggested. So things like typhoid and malaria pills, things like this. So I met with a travel nurse to go over where I'd be traveling and what her recommendations are. So yeah, hepatitis A and B, things like that, quite the standard ones.
Is there malaria out there? I mean, do you have to sleep under a mosquito net?
So the area that we work in primarily isn't truly in one of the hot zones, but I found, and my classmates had the same thing, that even though we weren't above the real danger zone for malaria, they still recommend having it with you. And it's honestly not a bad idea to just carry along, because the pills can work as a treatment as well in case you do happen to get malaria. But the other thing to consider is the season that you're traveling in. If it's wet or dry season, that could have an impact on malaria activity and mosquito activity. There haven't been that many mosquitoes actually where we've been working, thankfully. So I don't sleep under a mosquito net, and I just load myself up with bug spray if they're getting too annoying. But no, it hasn't been too bad. And knock on wood, I haven't had any issues with malaria or anything like that.
Any other mosquito-borne diseases out there, Adreena?
Not that I know of. There are tick-borne diseases. What is it called? Tick fever is the common name for it, I think. So that's definitely another thing to be wary of and cautious of, especially when you're working out in the field. Always do regular tick checks on yourself to make sure that nothing's latched on. Tuck your pants into your socks, tuck your shirt into your pants, and cover up as much as you need to. Apply bug spray and just be diligent about checking for any insects that could be tagging along on your body and potentially causing illnesses.
Adreena, can you describe the work in Namibia?
Yeah, so I've been working with Kalahari African Wild Dog Conservation Project for about 2 months. The work that this organization is doing focuses on the research, conservation, and conflict mitigation of African wild dogs living outside of national parks and protected areas in Namibia. It's a very understudied population and endangered species that resides here. So the work that I've been involved with so far has been very dynamic. The motto is kind of you run on wild dog time. So you have to move where they're moving and kind of think ahead in that terms. The projects that I've been working on specifically is helping to implement a new data collection tool called Earth Ranger that is basically a tool that you can use on your phone while you're out in the field to collect various types of data. Because the area is very remote, there's not a lot of information or regular monitoring that happens out there. So we're looking at prey activity, carnivore activity, specifically wild dogs, and then also noting down zones of interest. So if there's a water point, if there's a pan there, does the pan have water? Trying to build up more information on the landscape and ecology of the zone that we're studying. And then additionally to that, under the guidance of the research coordinator, Dr. Nicole Anderson, we have started to set up a camera trap study in the area that's aiming to build up information on pack demographics in the region, as well as starting to do individual IDs of the wild dogs that are there so that we can monitor them better and have a better understanding of how they're moving and utilizing the habitat. So there's been a lot of aspects on that. But additionally, because a lot of what KWDCP does, it involves community outreach and conflict mitigation, because a lot of, one of the main issues with free roaming wild dogs is persecution and loss of habitat. There's a lot of community outreach and education that goes onto it. So that includes going to do farm visits and having discussions with the locals on what information we can share and what information they can share with us as well. So whether it's notifying them of wild dog activity in the area, letting them know if they need to start implementing mitigation practices to protect their livestock, and then as well getting information from them about if they've seen any wild dog activity, if there's been any unusual circumstances that have been coming up, and how we can help with that in turn. So there's a lot of layers to the work that's being done, but it's I'm sure there's more to it from that, but just from the top of my head, that's the gist of what's been going on.
Adreena, was jet lag much of an issue when you first arrived?
It wasn't solely because I think when I landed, I started work the next day. So there wasn't a whole lot of time to even think about jet lag. It was just land, sleep, and then get right into it. So thankfully, I didn't suffer from jet lag too much. Maybe if I had taken a day to rest, it would have been a different story. But because there was so much happening and it was so exciting, I just I guess forgot my tiredness and my body kept up with me, which was a good thing.
What about sun cream? Do you have to use factor 50, factor 30 or something?
Funnily enough, at the beginning, I lathered myself with sunscreen every day. But now I've kind of built up an immunity, I think, a little bit. So it hasn't been that bad. I definitely apply sunscreen on a regular basis just to make sure I'm not getting too much sun damage. But no, it's hot, but I like it. So it's okay. Coming from the winter in Canada, I was due for a little bit of a tan.
Do you intend to pursue a career working with wild dogs?
I would love to. As far as I know, I don't think we have any wild dogs in captivity in Canada. Personally, what I would like to see is helping to build up and preserve the wild roaming populations that exist rather than seeing more animals in captivity. Of course, I understand the necessity of having captive animals when needed. But if I could, I would love to continue working with this organization, whether it be remote and sorting through data or coming back out into the field on a semi-regular basis. It's definitely something that I would like to continue. They're in need of some help and some research.
How was it joining an established team?
I was, of course, nervous and intimidated coming into the team at first. I think that a lot of people, when they're kind of moving out of the classroom setting and into a more, practical work environment, it's intimidating, and you can get a bit of imposter syndrome sometimes, But the team has been extremely welcoming and patient with me, and they've really made me feel extremely comfortable. I have spent probably hours on Zoom calls with the research coordinator in Australia, just asking questions and talking logistics. And with Naja in the field, she's had so much patience with helping to build up my confidence and coaching me and letting me kind of get into a groove, knowing that I can rely on the education that I do have, that it's going to back me up. So no, they've been absolutely great, and they all have a really good sense of humor too, which helps.
Culturally, Adreena, what have been the greatest challenges?
The greatest challenges, I think that For me, I basically always grew up living in larger cities in Canada. My reference point for farming in particular is generally large industrial farms and small hobby farms. I don't think before coming out here I really grasped the concept and importance of farming practices in Namibia and the concept of sustenance farming and how culturally ingrained livestock and farming is in Namibia. Um, they also have a really tight-knit relationship with their wildlife here. And of course, with that comes human wildlife conflict. So, in terms of cultural challenges, I think that that was a bit difficult for me to understand and grasp at the beginning because coming from the city, our biggest concern with wildlife and human wildlife conflict is like, how do you find a garbage can that can outsmart a raccoon? Or how do you keep squirrels away from a bird feeder? Now we're talking about predation and real life loss of livelihood. And it's a big concern for farmers who are living in remote areas and they rely on their farms for sustenance and their livelihood. So
What skills and personal qualities does a volunteer need to integrate into the group and do the research on wild dogs?
I think that above all, the most important thing is to go in with an open mind, to ask questions. I think that those are two skills that are needed and qualities that are needed. Practical things that you learn in school, you know, you can relearn them and you can adjust to those, but a lot of it comes from your own personal mentality and attitude towards it. So in addition to that, I feel like you need a lot of patience and perseverance and compassion when you're working with wild dogs, when you're working in conservation in general, because you're working with species that are sometimes difficult to work with. They're extremely smart and elusive. Um, they're, usually 20 steps ahead of you. And then perseverance to get through the difficult times. If you're having a rough field day, sometimes the days are going to be long and hot and exhausting. Um, but knowing that the end goal is bigger than the day or the issues of the day. And then compassion for the humans and the wildlife. Both of them are valuable living creatures and living beings.
Which people or meetings or books have most influenced your thinking about wild dogs and or conservation in general?
All of the KWDCP team. After working with them for a short period of time, they all are truly inspirations of what it means to do conservation and to put the needs of the animal first to protect an endangered species. In terms of conservation in general, I was really lucky to have a lot of really great teachers throughout my program, and my classes were all pretty small. So I had a lot of opportunities to talk with my teachers about their projects and about the realities of field work, as well. Reading books like Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, it opened my eyes to the human impact on wildlife and how far-reaching it can be in such a short amount of time, and also how powerful writing and research can be in terms of making change.
Did you have an interview for the position in Namibia?
I don't know if it was quite an interview. I had been selected basically for this project by my program coordinator because they were looking for someone very specific. So, and then had meetings with the team afterwards, just going over details of what the project goals would be while I was out in the field, kind of what to prepare for in those terms. But I guess I was lucky in bypassing an official interview.
Any do's and don'ts for as advice for other students joining a foreign conservation project, specifically in terms of clothes to wear for an interview, be it remote or in person?
I think for interview attire, comfort is important and you want to look professional, but I guess a lot of it depends on what type of internship you're applying for. If you're going to be doing remote field work, you want to look professional, but also like you can handle maybe living without a shower for extended periods of time or living in a tent. Because that's what's going to happen when you're working in remote areas without running water. Be comfortable, look professional, but also, present yourself in a way that shows you can hold your own in the wild.
Adreena, what are good questions that internship candidates or volunteers can ask at interview?
Well, I think that it's important to have a good understanding of what your field conditions are going to look like so that you can pack and prepare before you come out. So that's always a good thing to ask about is what are the conditions? What kinds of food can you expect to eat? And what you need to bring with you, what's essential.
Adreena, can you suggest a research project for students on wild dogs?
Some of these research projects came from the research coordinator with the KWDCP. I just want to preface by saying that a lot of research that's coming out about wild dogs, they're projects that are coming out of national parks and protected areas. So any kind of research topic that is looking at free roaming populations, it's a research project right there. Looking at how global climate change predictions are going to influence these things, that's a really important thing to consider, as well as looking at prey distributions in different regions and any research contributing to wild dog free roaming populations is good. There's also a lot of questions around what they do during dry season and how they're surviving without access to regular water points.
Adreena, you are currently a volunteer with the Kalahari Wild Dog Conservation Project in Namibia. Thank you very much for being on the Practical Animal channel. Adreena Kurdziel.
Thanks for having me.